Be sure to check out safety rules at safety.cybercitycircuits.com. And remember, always wear your eye protection.
Hey guys, Chris here from Cyber City Circuits. It's that time of the month. It is time for our subscription kits. So this month we have a fun new one. We had a lot of fun designing this one. It's going to be our Dreamweaver 4N Junior, which is kind of a really cool audio board. And, we'll go over that as we start pulling the parts out. But of course, in our box we've got our, thank you card. We really do appreciate you guys every month. And if you have a really any good pictures or anything like that you want to share with us, by all means, please do. We love seeing what is going on out in the world, especially with this pandemic going on. And we hope that these kits make you happy and are as fun to build as they are to design for us. So we really enjoy doing this and love seeing what goes on out there. We've also got our resistor card. This will come in handy because we do have some resistors in this kit. And then, of course, our Cyber City Circuit sticker. Hopefully you guys are sticking these things everywhere. Alright, so what's in the bag? Let's check it out here. So, a really cool new fun kit. We've got our small little inventory booklet that just goes over, all of our parts. And then we've got a QR code, and then of course, the Cyber City Circuits website to go and actually find all of the detailed instructions to put this kit together, and probably find this video if you haven't already been there. Well, let's see inside of this guy. We'll just dump it out. We got all kinds of fun goodies. So we got our 9-volt power, 9-volt battery. Set those off to the side. Fun speaker again. We've used this in a couple of previous projects. We'll keep that guy off to the side. One cool thing that we did this month that we have done in previous months is used an Arduino. This is an Atmega 328P. This is in a dip package, so you actually get to solder the dip package socket onto the board and then plug in your IC, integrated circuit. This has already been preloaded with the firmware that we'll need to get this project running. Set that guy off to the side. We have a bundle of resistors here. And looking at our resistor card, these resistors are brown, black, and red. So our brown is going to be 1 on the first band, 0 on the second band, and then 0 again on the third band. So these are actually 1K resistors. And there's a lot of locations for those. The only other resistor that we have in here is just a single, and this guy is a 100 ohm, and what it allows us to do is kind of control the current going to the speaker itself. You'll see it when we get to that point, kind of right in this area. The camera will focus on it. We also have some new things this month that some of you guys may not have seen before. These are all potentiometers, and they are essentially adjustable resistors. So these are 10K, 10,000 ohm potentiometers, and as you turn them, they will adjust. So one way is all the way down, or 0 ohms, and the other way goes all the way up to 10,000 ohms. And depending on where this is set, it's kind of like a volume knob. We can actually read the voltage coming off of these. It could be anywhere from 0 to 5 volts, and we use that in the software to control some of the different tones. Then we have LEDs, which we will use for a couple of different locations. So set those aside. I kind of like bundling all of my things together so that I have steps set up of what I'm going to install. We also have the little momentary buttons here. We'll set these guys off to this side. We have a slide switch for turning power on and off. We have an inductor. We have our capacitors. Let's see, put those in another spot over here. And then this guy this month, something else new that we have used. This is a 7805 regulator. What this does is it steps down voltage to 5 volts. It is a 5 volt regulator, So as we run power from our 9 volts, this will actually step it down to 5 volts for our processor to use, and it gives us that range of 0 to 5 volts for all of our potentiometers. And we'll install that guy here shortly. So let's get going. The way I like to build boards is to start with the smallest or lowest components on the board first. So that will be all of our resistors. We'll start with the 100 ohm first, since we only have one of them. What we'll do is take our paper ends off. I like to bend it over. A little trick that I've learned is just hold it between a couple of fingers and then take your 2 fingers from your other side, and you can just bend those leads together, and it makes it almost perfect to fit right on the board. Check out your solder safety video. If you guys haven't soldered before, some of you guys we'll get ready to do all of our soldering. So I have a clean iron. The tip is really good, ready to go. And I like having, you may hear a little bit of fan noise. I've actually got a filtered fan right here just to help with some of the fumes coming off the solder. And what we'll do is just start sticking components down. And you may actually see those fumes get sucked off one way into the fan over here. It's just a nice little thing that I like to do. It's a safety thing too. Let me find my cutters. So as we go, we will nip these, and remember, face it away from you so that these things don't fly across your lab or across your living room or kitchen table, wherever you're building this thing at. So our 1K or our 100 ohm is now installed. So we will step through and start doing all of the 1K resistors. We'll just break them all loose here. And again, I kind of like just bending everything up front so I can just grab and solder. And it's all personal preference of how you like to do it. I will probably do 4 at the time. So these locations are going to be R1, R2, R3, R4. We have R5, R6 up here. R7 was our 100 ohm, so we'll skip that, go R8, R9, R10, R11, R12, and R13. And on the website, we'll have these circled so you can see step by step exactly where they go. So I will do these 4 since they're all in a small group here. Flip this guy over. Tack them all down. Trim them all. Alright, we'll go with the next batch of 4. We'll spread the leads out a little bit so that it helps secure those in the spots. Alright, let's knock some more out. These guys. Alright, and then our last 4 should be with our other bank up here. So what some of these resistors actually do is they will reduce the current going to the LEDs, that we have here, like our power LED and then our indicator LEDs based on which audio channel is turned on. The other resistors actually act as either a pull-up or a pull-down for each potentiometer so that it always has a reference voltage, be it 0 or 5 volts. Spread those guys out just a little bit. Alright. Now our next lowest component is probably going to be these capacitors. So what we're going to do here, those will install in locations C1 and C2. And I like to hold them when I flip them just so I can kind of bend those out just a little bit. Grab our solder, put those in position. Now on our ground planes on these boards, you might notice that you have to heat up one side a little bit more than you do the other side. And that's because there's so much copper, what we call a ground plane, on one side of the component. Like these are actually tied between our ground plane and our positive rail. So you'll see one side will just flow very quickly. The other side takes a little bit more heat. You just have to be careful of not to overheat and actually burn the board. So you kind of want to just use a quick method of, touching it, liquefying the solder, and then getting it off of there. Trim these guys up. Now, so far, none of these components have needed to go in any certain orientation. Now, there are parts, obviously, that do need to do that. For those is going to be the LEDs. The potentiometers will only fit one way on the board. Same thing with our 7805 up here. Will basically only fit one way. So I say we do that guy next. To do these TO220 packages, what we'll try to do, you can notice right where it kind of gets thick between the pins. If I can bring this up to the camera view here, if it'll focus. That's kind of where we want to bend it. So I like to take my fingernail, just put right on the back at that line, and I'll just bend those guys 90 degrees, just like that. And that way, when I slide it onto here, you can see I match up the package, and I'll match up the hole here. Hold it on, flip it over, and I'm only going to solder one pin, and I'm going to do this so that I can adjust it and make sure that it looks correct on the board. You can see I kind of missed the hole a little bit, but I can kind of adjust it just a little bit. But if I loosen the solder on this by applying a little bit of heat, I can get that exactly where I want to get it. Right there. Now you'll notice it aligns up very well with our solder mask and our silk screen. So I will lock in the other two pins. And again, the only thing this 7805 does is reduces the voltage to 5 volts from our 9-volt battery. trim these guys up. All right. So next highest components, I believe, are going to be our push buttons. And they will only go in one way. And these are a little bit loose, so you can either bend the pins once you go through just a little bit to help make it a little tighter. Or what I like to try to do is I'll make a little loop of solder that just kind of sets where I can hold the board. That way I can hold the component with my finger. And I'm just going to pin one of the leads, and that's going to hold that in place for me. And I'll do that with all four, or actually all five on this board. And then I can set it down flat and hit the other 3 pins on each one of these. So get a nice little loop there, and I'll just bring the board up to the solder. And you can use other methods as well. You can put all the buttons in here and use a piece of tape to hold them all in. Just whatever you're comfortable with. It gives you the best solder joints. That's what we want. We've got one more at the top, our reset button. Slightly bigger loop. Alright. Now that we have those all pinned in place, we can hit all the other ones. And I like to go back once I have the other ones pinned and hit that first pin with a little bit of heat again, just to make sure I've got a good solder joint in there. Right. So all of our buttons have good connections. Feel good. I think our next placement, let's do our diodes. So we have 5 LEDs. And on these, you'll notice, some of you guys that have been with us in the past, LEDs normally have a long leg and a short leg, being our anode and our cathode, our positive and our negative leads. So LEDs will allow voltage to flow one way and light up, but being diodes, they will actually block voltage going the other way and will not light up. So we need to make sure that we get these in the correct way. Now we've labeled the board. Now you have your positive and your negative lead. In most cases, your long lead is going to be your positive for LEDs. It's best to always check them, but for most of our kits, that's exactly how it is. So what we're going to do is install the long lead into the positive marking on the board. And you'll also see that we try to normally put a line next to the positive lead that shows you that lead is longer, just to help out and give you as many visual indicators as we can. So again, what we'll do with these, what I like to do is just put them in place. I'll hold them with a finger, and I'll get my solder again. Just make a little loop. This way I can pin it and kind of hold it in place. I can pin it with one pin. Make sure that it looks good. Make sure it's not crooked. And I like it. So we'll do all 4, actually all 5, just like this. long pin to the positive marking. Spread these guys out just a touch. Now some people, I'll show you another trick, they will actually spread the LEDs out, or the legs out. And what that allows you to do is you don't have to hold it then, you can set it down. You do the same trick. You'll pin one of the legs first. And then you can flip it over, make sure that it's flat. It's crooked just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is put my finger on it and kind of hold a little bit of pressure. So as I heat that lead back up, I can just kind of wiggle it and get it perfectly flat and aligned. We'll do the rest of the LEDs the same way. Now that we have all 5 LEDs in their locations, I'll hit the other pins. Alright. So we'll go ahead and throw this on-off switch in here next. It doesn't matter which way you put it on. Again, we'll do the trick of holding it. Loop of solder. And we just want to pin one of the leads so that we can adjust it after the fact. And make sure we're straight. As you can see there, I'm a little bit crooked. Try to do this for the camera. I'm going to heat it up. Use my finger to pull it flat. And then once that solder solidifies again, I can hit the other two. We know that we have a good mechanical and electrical connection. And I'll go back and hit that first one. And trim those guys. Alright, next thing we want to do, I think we do the processor next. So on the processor, you'll notice there are notches which kind of lead towards where pin 1 is going to be. So I'll leave the processor on our phone, but you'll see a notch here, and we also have the same notch on our dip socket. So if you can see those. And our silk screen on the board shows the dip socket with the notch at the bottom towards this LED. So we want to make sure it has to go in this way. If we install this upside down, we risk actually sending voltage to the wrong pins on the processor, which could render it useless. So same thing, I'm going to flip it. I'm going to get a couple of pins touched. Make sure we're good and flat. Good and flat on both ends. And then we'll run through and solder the entire dip socket in. Once we're happy with that, we can install our processor. But I'm going to wait till the very end to do the processor. I like to have all of my soldering done before I install that processor. It just keeps it a little bit more static control, keeps me from touching these pins. So next things next, let's throw the speaker on here. On the back of the speaker, you'll see it's marked as well, positive and negative. It matches with the board, positive and negative. That way we can make sure that we get the correct polarity. Same as before. I just want to pin one, solder one pin rather, make sure it's good and flat. Once I'm happy with it, I'll do the second one. Alright, so we have our potentiometers next. Now you may have to bend these pins just slightly to help alignment go in. These larger pins, the locator pins, are fairly tight on the board, and we want that so that it makes a good mechanical connection. So we'll slide the 3 pins in first, and it may take a little bit of force, but they will click right in the position. And once you have those in, you can just go through and solder the back. Now these don't really wiggle since they're so tight, so we can put all 6 in and then solder in one shot. Alright, now that we're all in, we'll flip it over, lock these guys into position. Alright, we have all 6 potentiometers in place now. So let's do our battery connection next. And on batteries, most of the time when you're doing DC power, not all the time, but most of the time, your red's going to be your positive and your black is going to be your negative. And on the board we have it labeled positive and negative, plus sign or minus sign, so positive, negative. And personal choice, you can either go through the bottom and solder on the top, or you can go through the top and solder on the bottom. I like for wires to come from the bottom, just my personal preference. Hold that wire there and use my solder loop trick. I'll bring the board and the wire up to the solder. Just make a nice little solder connection there. Same thing with the positive. Alright, I feel pretty good about those. So all that's left, besides plugging our battery in, is putting this processor on. Now again, it does have the locator on one side, the little notch. We need to make sure that that matches with the board. We may have to adjust the pins in just a little bit. You can squeeze them gently to help match that dip socket. Test the fit, see if it'll align. We may have to adjust it a couple of times. You don't want to force it in and bend any pin. You want to make sure that all the pins go into the holes of the dip socket. Once it's in, it will lock itself into place. So I have pretty good fitment here. I'm going to check the other side, make sure they're all going in the holes. And once I'm happy with it, I'll just give it a little push, and it just seats it right in. And now, moment of truth. Let's take our battery out of its packaging. Plug it in. And let's flip it on. So our power light comes on. We saw a nice little boot up procedure, and we're ready. So what each of these buttons do is it turns on a channel of audio. So if I press one, I've got this channel of audio. I'm not sure if you can hear it or not. Turn off my fan. And I can change that duration and the spacing. It makes a nice little cool synthesizer. Let me do another channel. And I can adjust all of my tones. So you can have fun playing and doing all kinds of fun note activities. If you guys like this, please go check out our other kits. Like and subscribe, and we'll bring you another cool kit next month. Thank you guys for watching.